more oil on their skins, on their bodies. Do you know what gave rise to this?
It is lack of information, Sakina, and one, if people have challenges and they do not have access to solutions, whatever information they will be given, they will run with it. So people are told that transformer oil treats conditions like arthritis, for an example. And there's been oils that have been sold at Tech the Ranks and place at different places. And people do buy this transformer oil because there is the belief that it heals arthritis. So it is lack of information that has caused this, and unfortunately, people have gotten to believe that. Some of them that have used it, unfortunately, then they realize that it is not as effective as they were told, or it does not work as they were told.
And those who are selling it, have you been able to establish just how widespread the sale of this transformer oil is, and whether it's concentrated in certain areas, or is it something that is available quite widely?
We have learned last year. I mean, so we got onto an awareness raising campaign last year to alert communities in different municipalities around the country about the dangers of PCBs. And then we learned that there are people that sell this oils. That's basically when we started learning that you find it widespread, truly, because there is benefit with regards to the treatment of certain diseases, and some also traditional beliefs that people hold with regards to the use of transformer oil.
Absolutely fascinating. But obviously, the environmental costs, I would imagine, is something that would concern you, Mr. Baloyi. The cost of the long-term effects of the usage for those who unfortunately have fallen prey to using transformer oil. Can you talk to us about that and also the long-term impact on the environment?
Perfect. Good question. I mean, for us, obviously, as the department responsible for environmental management, we certainly are concerned with the impact on the environment. The first thing with transformer oil is that most of it contains polychlorinated biphenyls, which is a chemical that is toxic and takes forever to break down. Well, it doesn't break down. We call it a forever chemical. So it stays in the environment for a very long time, and also, the other important thing to note is that it's a transboundary chemical. So whatever we may have in South Africa because of water moving through the borders or the air, you may find that it also is in Zimbabwe, or whatever is produced in Lesotho or Eswatini, you may find it coming into South Africa. So that is the first thing, that it's a transboundary chemical. It goes all over. Secondly is that it takes a long time to break down, and if it is in the environment, certainly it will have an impact on the biodiversity. It will have an impact on plants, and also on the animals. For us as human beings, we work closely with the Department of Health when we do this awareness raising with regards to the health impacts. It certainly, I mean, as I indicated before, people believe that it heals arthritis. The biggest danger is that it is a cancer-causing chemical. So, and this, obviously, they're applying it directly onto the skin, so the risk is even bigger because it is directly onto human body. So those are the impacts that this transformer oil that contains PCB would have on both the health and the environment as well.
And just finally, Mr. Baloyi, you are raising awareness, all that is good and well, but what about accountability measures against those who knowingly promote and supply what they know to be a hazardous substance?
Good question. I mean, we published regulations in 2014 for the phase out of polychlorinated biphenyls. And I'm saying phase out because most municipalities have these oils in the transformers that are currently working. And because of lack of awareness of the dangers that these PCBs had, the continuous use of that oil is still there. But the regulations gives us until 2028 to make sure that no one in South Africa will be in possession of any equipment or oils that have PCB. So by 2028, we must have basically collected, and we are assisting municipalities with that. We have a project now that has been running for the last 2 years where we collecting the PCB equipment containing oils as well to make sure that it is safely disposed of so that the access to this is not there. Industry has been doing well in complying with regards to the regulations as well. Most of them have developed phase-out plans, and most of them have already phased the use of PCB containing material out, which is good. So that is the biggest thing that we've done. And obviously the regulations have offenses and penalties, where after 2028, if you do not have a phase-out plan, if you have not complied with your phase-out plan, then there will be penalties according to law. But what is important is what I've indicated, because our people did not know the impacts of this PCB transformer oil, which has been good. And that's why, I mean, they've been coming out, all this information about where these things are sold, what these things do, the traditional beliefs as well. We have learned from the different communities. So it was a very good learning as well from the department itself with regards to the uses of these substances.
Well, Mr. Baloyi, thanks so much for raising that awareness. And that was the Chief Director of Environmental Economics in the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, Mr. Obed Baloyi. So substances, the department says that the industrial substance that is contained in these oils that people are now using, transformer oil for that matter, contains a very harmful toxin, and the toxic PCB, he said, it's polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and that poses a serious risk to human health and the environment. So please be on the lookout for that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Now, 56-year-old Tsepo Nzimane, who is a Soweto church elder accused of the rape of a 12-year-old Dobsonville child, has abandoned his bail application before the matter was postponed for further investigations to the 20th of May. Now, Nzimane made a brief appearance in court today. This was, of course, at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court. And the court also heard that key evidence, including a witness statement and video footage, are still outstanding. For more on this story, let's cross to SABC reporter Luyanda Danka for more. Luyanda, good afternoon. So do we know what prompted the accused Tsepo Nzimane to abandon his bail application?
Good afternoon to you, Sakina, and good afternoon to our listeners. So the accused abandoned his bail application because there were outstanding evidence, including a witness statement as well as video footage.
And of course, this is a case that has caught the attention of many, especially the community in Soweto, where this accused, of course, was a church elder, or is still a church elder, I would imagine. But speaking to that critical evidence, including the witness statement and video footage still being outstanding, how was that explained in court, if at all?
Yeah, the matter was explained at court because I remember outside people were protesting Sakina. There were some social justice activists as well as the MEC for development mentioning that this is a really problem. I remember the SAPC spoke with Musambewe, who is a social justice, saying that the system needs to do more to protect victims. She also mentioned that justice is soft when it comes to cases of this matter. And also, we spoke to the MEC for Gauteng, for social development here in Gauteng, Nomantu Nkomo Ralehogo, who also called out for justice for who also called victims of gender-based violence to speak out on matters like this, and also the perpetrators to be actually held accountable, Sakina.
And of course, with regard to the prosecution and their case, did the state have anything to say about the outstanding statement and the video footage?
Yeah. The matter, we were unable to continue. I remember the appearance of the proceedings only lasted for about 5 minutes because the defense explained that there are some missing evidence, including the witness statement as well as the video footage. So they were unable to continue today. That's a main reason why the case is postponed to the 20th of May.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, SABC News reporter Luyanda Tanka there at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court for us. And this was, of course, for the appearance of 56-year-old Tsepo Ntsimane.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It is 26 minutes after 12. The Pretoria North Magistrates Court has ruled against giving Sergeant Fani Nkosi bail. Nkosi, who's of course a member of the Organised Crime Unit, was arrested following a raid at his Pretoria North home where dockets, explosives, cash and ammunition were found earlier this month. He faces charges including theft, defeating the ends of justice and the unlawful possession of ammunition and explosives. For more on what transpired in court, we join now by our reporter Refilwe Mekwa. Refilwe, good afternoon. Let's start with the reasons given by the court as to why bail was denied for Sergeant Nkosi.
Good afternoon, Sakina, and to all our listeners out there. Well, there were plenty of reasons that Magistrate Tandi Teledi highlighted, but I can just touch on, I think, those that were important and crucial, which I think one of the most outstanding one is that Nkosi, or Sergeant Nkosi rather, couldn't provide explanation in terms of the over 50,000 cash that was stashed under his mattress, stating that his evidence, it really lacked details and collaboration. She also indicated that the stun grenades that were found at his home were in contravention with the law, and that the official dockets of the SAPS equipment that was in his possession was unlawful, even though they were found 4 days after his suspension, and Sakina, because we do know that the raid at his house place after his suspension. The magistrate is saying he could have just taken back everything back to the police station since he was then arrested. She also stated that his release could undermine public confidence on the justice system, and it can also disturb public order and peace. Sakina?
Refilwe, in terms of who was in court today, any familiar faces, anyone interesting who may have been mentioned at the commission, or who was in court today?
No one interesting or well-known, rather who was rather previously mentioned from the commission. It was just the NPA, and I think even perhaps his family, because previously the day last week when he appeared, or rather was it Monday, I know they were very strict instructions in terms of who should enter the court. Not everyone was allowed to be in court. So I think in terms of who was there, not anyone from the Madlanga Commission. And I must indicate, talking about the commission, the magistrate highlighted and stressed that her decision today is got nothing to do with the Madlanga Commission. In fact, her decision is based on the evidence that was provided by the state in terms of the raid that transpired on that day at his home and everything that was found there, which the charges are from that particular day, Sakina. And the NPA did actually welcome the decision, saying this is in the right direction in terms of the criminal justice system. Although they looked defeated, the defense and Nkosi as well, I think they were confident that they'll probably, get bail, and it remains to be seen whether they will challenge the outcome or rather accept it. They haven't said anything yet. They said they will be studying the judgment so far. Sakina?
Refilwe, thanks so much for the update. Our reporter Refilwe Mekwa, who's at the Pretoria North Magistrates Court, where Sergeant Fani Nkosi has been denied bail. Well, it is 12:30. Let's bring you up to speed with the latest news headlines. Here's Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. On the news headlines, the Limpopo Transport Department says brake failure led to the bus crash on the N1 near Louis Trichat in the early hours of this morning. Limpopo Premier Dr. Popi Ramatuba has directed health authorities to expedite the test on the alleged food contamination incident at Motong Wabuhobe village outside Bulukwane, and suspended police sergeant Fani Nkosi will remain at the Hoshi Mapuru prison after his bail application was dismissed in the Pretoria North Magistrates Court. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And we're joined now by Andre Brink, investment strategist at Absa Investments, to tell us what's happening on the markets. Good afternoon, Andre.
Good afternoon, Sakina. Market sentiment continues to be largely driven by the developments in the Middle East. So yesterday, we did see the US president extending the ceasefire with Iran, which was due to expire today, stating that the ceasefire would remain in place until they can reach a formal peace agreement. So reaction has been quite mixed after this extension. We've seen US futures markets trading slightly higher, European markets also gaining, but Asian indices moving lower. And then similarly, if we're looking at the local market, the all share also slightly in the red, and that largely on the back of a sell-off in resources, but seeing quite a broad-based downturn with industrials and financials also in the red. From a currency perspective, however, we are seeing the rand holding up quite well against the dollar despite some of the heightened volatility we've seen over the past few days. So currently trading around that 16 rand 50 cents to the dollar mark, and definitely off those highs we saw about a month ago. Then in terms of commodities, if we're looking at Brent crude prices, those have been very sporadic and whipsawing as participants assess the developments that we have been seeing. But since the extension of the ceasefire, I have seen those Brent crude prices moving to below the $100 per barrel mark. So looking slightly more positive this morning. Then earlier today, we saw Stats SA releasing inflation data for March. So headline inflation rose slightly to about 3.1% on a year-on-year basis, only 0.1 percentage points higher than the prior month's reading, but still coming in line with market expectations. And the biggest drivers there coming from the likes of housing and utilities, food and non-alcoholic beverages, as well as insurance and financial services. So all of those components pushing the print slightly higher. Importantly to note, though, that this reading does not yet reflect the impact of those higher fuel prices that we've been seeing on the back of the US-Iran war. So we do anticipate quite a big jump in the April release because some of those fuel price hikes were implemented around the 1st of April, and we do expect that to start filtering through into the numbers. So anticipating a slightly higher print for the month of April.
Andre, thanks so much. Andre Brink is investment strategist at Absa Investments.
SAFM Sport with John Gerika.
What you tugging at?
Hey, but I'm pulling it through my headphone wires.
Oh.
It's all we're intertwined, Sakina.
Literally. rather do the sport.
See, this is sometimes a better joke for TV than it is for radio. All right, let's see what's happening in the cricket today. 30-20 in Johannesburg. If the weather holds, 20 to 35% chance of rain at the Wanderers. South Africa take on India from 6 o'clock today. South Africa lead the 5-match series 2-0. They can seal the win today. Here's Proteas Seamer Tumi Sekakune.
I think it's very important for us to, have a 3-0 tomorrow because, we're preparing for the World Cup and, we want to take that momentum going into the World Cup. And obviously, we trying to, do things differently and see if they could work, different combinations and see Sune betting up there, opening the batting. So I think those are the things that I think we are working towards in getting into the World Cup.
In football tonight, Premiership action at 7:30. Mamelodi Sundowns take on Stellenbosch. It's a big game. Champions League campaign on the go for Sundowns as well. Another title race at home. Coach Miguel Cardoso, though, says he's enjoying his time in South Africa.
If there's something important, the press officer from the club will tell me, or my assistant coaches will tell me. Whatever is beyond that or on the side, I don't relate to it. I always try to see is if my son is okay, if my wife is okay, my papa and mama are okay. Because if they are okay, I'm good and I can manage and I can go forward. But I want to give, most of all, I want to give joy to Sundowns, to Mamelodi Sundowns family. That's what I want, is to see these people enjoy, to be with them, and something is very beautiful because there's a lot of people that speak on social media, but I have to confess to you, and I'm not telling lies, there's not even one single moment on my personal life in South Africa that someone came to me and complained. So people on the streets, on the supermarket, where I go everywhere, and I go on the streets, I go everywhere. Of course, I don't have a lot of time, so I don't go many times. But when I go, people give me love, and I give love to people.
In England tonight, Bournemouth take on Leeds at 9 o'clock, but the big game is probably Burnley hosting Manchester City also at 9.
Come on, Burnley.
It's an evening with contrasting emotions at Turf Moor. Defeat against City will confirm Burnley's relegation to the Championship. 3 points for the Citizens could see them summit the Premier League. City manager Pep Guardiola was asked what it means to overtake Arsenal, who've been top of the table for 200 days.
That means how good they have been, how consistent they have been. And a game to try to be same points at them. Yeah, we talk immediately in the dressing room after the game. Don't lose the focus. The focus is Arsenal is top of the league. Right now, in that moment, we'll be champion. And of course, the recovery is much less than the last 2 weeks. It's just 2 days, so that's why you have to see how people recover, not just the demanding game that we had emotionally and physically. But at the same time, so we have 6 games left, so we know exactly what is going to happen when we get result, or just in case we don't get result.
Yeah, Pep knows how to win a league. Let's go to other football where 10 years ago, Leicester were just days away from winning their Premier League. Next season, they will be playing in League One. They suffered a sharp decline since winning the FA Cup in 2021. Last night's 2-2 draw with Hull confirmed their relegation to the third tier. In 2016-17, they played Atletico Madrid in the Champions League quarterfinals. A decade later, the Foxes will be in a league with Bromley, who have spent 132 of their 134 years in existence playing non-league football. Some tennis news for you. A decline in form. Former world number 1 Venus Williams has lost her 10th singles match in a row. She was beaten 6-2, 6-4 by Caitlin Quevedo at the Madrid Open. She's 45 years old. The first former number 1 to lose 10 matches in a row since the rankings were established in 1975. Quevedo, who's 20 years old, is ranked 140 in the world, playing her first WTS 1000 match. The wild card came from 3-0 down in the second set, or 3-love down in the second set to secure the win against Williams. She's won, let me get this fact straight, Venus Williams won 6 of her 8 Grand Slam titles before her opponent was born.
Okay, who's going to tell Venus to
somebody
stop?
Tap her on the shoulder there.
Yeah.
And finally, 50 days to go to the FIFA World Cup 26. Kicks off across the States, Canada and Mexico. The first time the tournament will be hosted by 3 nations. The expanded 48-team format means more matches, more fans than ever before. Another first will be the final will feature a halftime show. And for some odd reason, FIFA, the governing body of football on the planet, don't think that the players are the draw cards to the event?
Yes, well, of course, we are involving, in the World Cup, all the celebrities that you can imagine from other sports, from American sport. I mean, we had Tom Brady, Shaquille O'Neal, and others in our events. Already, they love it. We will have, for the first time in history, actually, at the final, which is taking place on 19th of July in New York, New Jersey, we'll have, for the first time ever, a halftime show. A halftime show curated by Chris Martin and Coldplay. So I cannot yet tell you which artists will be performing, but it's not one, it's more than one. And it will be the biggest in the world. It will be fantastic. It's the first time in history.
The Americanization of football.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Of soccer.
Of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m.
20 minutes before 1, John Hirika, he'll be back tomorrow. But of course, let's take a quick look at this story. The Constitutional Court has dismissed an appeal by the South African Human Rights Commission against an August 2024 ruling by the Supreme Court of Appeal, confirming that the Commission, that's the Human Rights Commission, cannot enforce its own directives. Now, in its judgment, the Apex Court reaffirmed that the South African Human Rights Commission must approach the courts to give legal effect to its findings, underscoring the limits of Chapter 9 institutions and preserving the judiciary's role in enforcement. Now, here's Justice Stephen Majid delivering the judgment.
This court emphasizes that the absence of binding remedial powers does not diminish the constitutional importance of the Human Rights Commission or render its work ineffectual. The Human Rights Commission is far from toothless. Its influence lies in the deployment of the powers conferred upon it by the Constitution and the SAHRC Act, including the exercise of extensive investigative authority, the support of litigation, the shaping of the conduct of state officials, the informing of public debate, and the exertion of normative pressure on organs of states and private actors alike. Properly understood, the SAHRC's strength lies precisely in its capacity to act in ways that courts cannot. For these reasons, the following order is made. Leave to appeal is granted, and the appeal is dismissed. There is no orders to costs. I hand down the judgment.
Well, that was Justice Stephen Majid delivering the Constitutional Court judgment.
Hi, Sakina. Earlier from Durban. Hope you're well. You know, people are wondering why that people who have been reported for theft and corruption on the Madlanga Commission are now getting arrested, as they were not on the Zondo Commission.
Princess Sakina, and your team, are you still there? Are you still alive? Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to everybody. It's good to hear your voice, Sakina. It's Uncle JJ, the truck driver, back in the country. These days, Sakina, I'm just traveling up and down, traveling different countries. Anyway, Sakina, when these guys were playing their games, did they think of that this thing one day can turn around, or can turn back, or it can backfire? Kosi and all the other culprits. Sakina, we'll talk more.
Well, thanks so much for those voice notes. And of course, I know you want to return to the Madlanga Commission. So for the next at least 15 minutes, let's take you there. And today, of course, Brigadier Nkwashu is before the Commission. He, of course, is the Deputy District Commissioner in Sedibeng and has been fingered there in earlier proceedings. Witnesses A and B be. And this had to do with the Armand Swart case. So Brigadier Abram Kwashu has told the commission so far that he met businessman Katiso Katie Molefe through a family, as Molefe is married to his sister-in-law, and that their conversations at first were generally casual and business related. But let's take you back now to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, where Brigadier Abram Kwashu continues his presentation.
When we're talking about not wanting to narrate too much and disclose certain hidden things, talk about the estate of the brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you say that in this meeting, she then had a conversation with you about meeting Mr. Molefe.
Correct, Advocate.
Now, when this happens, you hadn't met Mr. Molefe at all. And in fact, on your version, you had only heard about him in 2005. What did you think about this request to meet him?
I asked her, why does your husband want to meet me? He says, it is not good that you guys, you don't know one another, yet me, I communicate with you now and there. And now my husband is more than willing to meet you, and I want, me as Funis, I want you to meet my husband.
Brigadier, just to make sure, in your earlier statement you said that, was it her husband that wanted to meet you? Right? And then she, of course, had her own independent desire for you to meet him.
Yes. So both of them, they wanted to meet me according to my understanding, because she said, it is not right for you not knowing my husband. Now, my husband proposed to meet you, and I also want you to meet my husband.
Now, did you find it at all strange that this request was coming in 2024 when they got married in 2021, and you started knowing of him and his intention to marry in 2005?
Of course, Advocate, I find it strange.
And did you convey those feelings of finding it strange?
To her?
Yes.
Yes, of course. As we were discussing, I asked politely that why ukatiso afuna uzohlangana nami, and you know ukuthi ngakutshela ukuthi ukatiso angimfuni because he's a married man. He's no longer married now. What I no, they are he's divorcing with his wife. So he will come and confirm it to you. So he's no longer a married a man. So I said, oh, okay, it's fine.
Okay, so because he was no longer married, is that what made you willing to meet, or you were willing to meet irrespective?
It loosened my feeling about the man.
Okay. Now, at this stage, outside of what you know of him, which is he's a businessman and he was married, did you know anything else about Mr. Molefe?
No.
And had you checked on Mr. Molefe, who
No.
he is, or asked anyone about him?
No.
All right.
Not at that stage.
Okay. And so you then proceed to the meeting with Mr. Molefe, and you've already testified that Ms. Nyangule and your nephew didn't stay long.
On the meeting with Katis.
Meeting with Katis.
Yes, Advocate.
All right. So the two of you say, talked on very general terms, you say?
Correct, Advocate.
Including that he told you about his various business interests and the security sector.
Correct, Advocate.
And then you say you told him about your approaching retirement. Was this a frank discussion about you potentially joining him?
Perhaps, can you narrate on the frank discussion?
Was it an offer? You were saying, I'm retiring. He says, I have interest in security. And in fact, you said, this is beyond your statement, that he had a tender. I think you said Machabeng.
Correct, Advocate.
And that tender needed security.
Correct, Advocate.
And so he was offering, or at least requesting, that when you retire, you would come and work with him.
Correct, Advocate. Let me tell you that as we were discussing, after all the discussions, when he come to this point, I finally thought, oh, this is why he wanted to come and see me. Because he told me about this tender there, and that it's a multi-billion tender, and I'm needing 3 security companies to be in this particular area. And as you say, you are nearing to retirement. I think it can assist you in your retirement if you choose to. Then I said, no, you're coming up with something good I'm interested in. And we can start working on the issues on my period of nearing retirement.
Okay, so you are saying that then felt like this was the crux of why he wanted to meet you.
Exactly, because all this time I was still so casual.
Cagey, or
yeah, cagey.
Because when you say casual, but you're.
I'm sorry. You know, suppose
So you were still apprehensive and cagey.
Exactly,
not
I was still cagey as to exactly why did he want to come and meet me, because he was just telling me, introducing himself, telling me his upbringings, going to school, and he's a businessman and so forth. He grew up playing this and that, and telling me like he's giving me his CV.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
But still, I was not convinced, but little bit convinced to think that maybe he is trying to qualify that he is a good man for my sister. Because he even told me that he is in the process of a divorce without me asking him. Then I thought, oh, okay, Fundisa told him that this is what I said.
Yeah.
So in a way, I was starting to be convinced that I was starting to give him a benefit of doubt.
Okay. All right. And so he tells you about this opportunity. You agree that, okay, it's something that's good and something to consider. And then I guess you're concluding, you say, he then asks you a question about this bail application. How does it come about? Does it come about as abrupt as you describe it?
Correct, Advocate. We were sitting now, finishing our meal and drinks, and it was now some time that we've been talking. So after concluding this issue of the security business and the likes, and I'm now open now. Now I'm starting to like the man.
Okay.
Yeah, I must be honest. I'm starting to like the man and open up now. This is a good idea, man. I've got an experience where I can run security, and I'll start registering security company, and I think I'll be pensioning towards the right direction. because I had my plans, but this one, I think it supersedes my plans.
Okay. So it wasn't just a casual, you were in it with what he was saying and about the...
about the business.
Yes.
We talked in depth. We talked in depth.
So this in-depth conversation about the opportunities starts to die down as you're finishing your meals. How does this then come up about the friend who's been arrested?
Yeah, as we were about to finish, and I'm saying, hey, so thanks very much, man, but time is running out here. He even said, no, don't worry, Swar, we'll ask for a bill, and then I'll foot the bill, and then we'll go. Then, as the waiter came, and then he told him that, prepare for us the bill. Now, this latter topic now comes.
Yes.
He says, hey, Swar, una di tatanyana ulinteng mona kupang unthuse ka bona, ne? Ki Swar. And then Atoma Uthalusa started explaining as I've
Sorry, Brigadier, you speak English well. Can you please say all of that in English? For the record.
I apologize, Commissioner.
No need to apologize at all. It's our languages, but this is purely for the record.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So he started telling me that one of the friends that he grew up with, that he was telling me about, has...
Sorry, Brigadier. So just to note what you had said in vernac, you started with, he asked you for help and said, hey, brother-in-law, there's a problem that I have.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Then...
Kinalibutata, there's a problem that I have.
Yeah. One of those friends that I was talking about earlier on is arrested, and IA is arrested by you, and is seeking bail, and I said, wait, my brother. That's when I stopped him on his tracks to tell me the details. Before he even tell me who this friend is, then I started changing to say, I don't discuss work cases. So, and I not even discuss work with my wife. Yeah.
Now, when he says one of the friends...
The latter part is difficult to believe. We always hear about pillow talk, and I would assume that most people do engage in pillow talk, so involving even matters of work. So I'm surprised to hear that you did not discuss your work with your wife in what I refer to as pillow talk. But anyway, that's besides the point, and it's not important.
Thank you, Commissioner.
When he says one of the friends I was talking about, given that you described the conversation about his upbringing and friends in general terms, did you know what friend he was talking about?
No, I didn't.
Did he say the friend who was a police officer, or were there any identifying adjectives or descriptions that he was giving, or he just said a friend that I spoke about?
He just said a friend, my friend, and then I started saying, as long as the thing that prompted me to stop him is when he says, this particular friend of mine was arrested by you in Vereniging. Then I said, I don't discuss my cases, not even with my wife. So let's if you want me and you to have a sound relationship, let's not talk about my work, because if we start talking about my work now, I'm doing something that I'll lose my work. I don't talk about my work. let's respect one another for that.
And when he said, oh, my apologies.
Sorry, Ms. Brigadier, you earlier on you said a few sentences back. He said that the friend that I was talking about earlier. You remember saying that?
Yeah, Commissioner. Maybe if I may clarify, maybe I put it out of context. He earlier on told me that his upbringing with friends. So amongst those friends, there is a friend of him who was arrested in my area by me.
I see. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
And on that cliffhanger, we have to leave it. Thank you so much for being with us here on Update at Noon. Of course, the Madlanga Commission usually takes that lunch break at 1 o'clock. It's literally 10 seconds away. But we have to say goodbye. Brigadier Abraham Kwashu, who is, of course, the suspended Sedibeng District Commissioner, appearing before the Commission today. And take care until tomorrow from the team and I. And it's 1 o'clock. Here's on Delambana with your latest news.
Thank you, Sakina and the team. On the top stories, CONCORT rules on SAHRC's directives and no response yet from Iran on Trump's ceasefire extension. For SAFM News, I am Onde Lambana, and a very good day. The Constitutional Court of South Africa has ruled that the South African Human Rights Commission cannot enforce its own directives. The ConCourt confirmed that the Commission must approach courts to give legal effect to its findings. The ruling reinforces limits on Chapter 9 institutions and maintains the role of the judiciary in enforcement. The Pretoria North Magistrates Court has heard that suspended Police Sergeant Fanny Nkosi failed to provide a credible explanation for being in possession of a stun grenade and multiple police dockets relating to serious and violent crimes. The court has dismissed Nkosi's bail application. The Gauteng Organised Crime Unit member was arrested earlier this month following a raid at his Pretoria North home where multiple police dockets, a stun grenade, ammunition and over 50,000 rand in cash were found. Magistrate Tandi Teledi presided over the bail application.
These bail proceedings are not concerned with public perception, media narratives, or matters ventilated outside the evidential record before court. The applicant was found in possession of a stun grenade, which is a prohibited explosive device, as well as a substantial quantity of live ammunition exceeding 400 rounds. The applicant has failed to provide a credible explanation for the possession of the stun grenade and the manner in which the ammunition was stored. The applicant was found in possession of multiple police dockets relating to serious and violent crimes.
The Limpopo Transport Department says brake failure led to the bus crash on the N1 near Louis Trichardt in the early hours of this morning. The crash happened on the Tambudzi Valley near the Ingwe Curve on the mountainous stretch when a Zimbabwe bus lost control and veered into a ditch. One passenger died and 3 sustained serious injuries. Department spokesperson Chifiwa Dali says it's concerning that it is the 3rd bus crash at the same area in 6 months.
Preliminary reports indicate that a bus was traveling from Johannesburg en route to Harare with 6 staff crew members and 8 passengers. It is alleged that the driver lost control. From the reports, it's indicated that the bus brakes failed, horribly so, and it resulted in a horror accident. This time it's on the right, on your way from Gauteng, which is very abnormal.
Limpopo Premier Dr. Poppy Ramotuba has directed health authorities to expedite the test on the alleged food contamination incident at Mutong Wabuhobe village outside Bulugwane. Police and the provincial government indicate that their records point to 3 deaths related to the incident and not 6 as reported earlier. Ramotuba Health MEC Diekitsing Mashego as well as Transport MEC Violet Mataye visited those that are still being treated at Lubuakhomo Hospital. The Premier says the test result will help determine the cause of the alleged food contamination.
Where we are sitting,
we can indicate to you that forensic pathology have started their work to collect the stomach contents also for chemistry so that we can test for any toxicology. On the other side, all those who were seen in our hospitals, the samples, the stools for culture have already been collected by our national laboratory, and we're expecting the results.
There has been no formal response so far from Iran to President Donald Trump's extension of a ceasefire, but several officials have expressed skepticism. One MP who was part of Tehran's team at talks in Islamabad said that negotiating with the U.S. was detrimental and irrational. Tasneem News, which is affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards, said Iran had not asked for a ceasefire extension and repeated threats to break the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports by force. The BBC's Paul Adams has the details.
I think he's straddling the difference between diplomacy and war. The blockade that he still has in place in the Gulf is a coercive measure designed to put pressure on Iran to come to the negotiating table. But there was something interesting in Donald Trump's language overnight when he talked about regime fracture in Tehran. The sense now that Washington has that as a result of the fact that so many Iranian leaders have been killed in the course of the past 6 or 8 weeks, that it is not entirely clear to Washington who is calling the shots.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court of South Africa has ruled that the South African Human Rights Commission cannot enforce its own directives. I'm Wanda Lambana for SFM News Headlines at 1:30.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all, under the theme Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
A relentless song engandiniki buthongo. Ingoma endiyithanda nanini na. Ngoma wena wangena kum. Wenza umzimba wami ikhaya lakho. Watsho kum ngaphakathi. Deep inside of me. Oh, ngoma ndini. Wandiphatha ndaguquka. Soze ndiphinde ndive into enjengalela. Oh, sithando sam, uyingoma, uyingoma wena, ngoma wena, uyingoma wena, ngoma wena, ingoma emvilapha kumbe emzimbeni, ingoma emnandi, ingoma engathi kiyawo, ingoma engathi kiyawo, wena uyingoma, wena uyingoma, wena uyingoma, wena uyingoma, oh, ingoma engathi kiyawo, ingoma engathi kiyawo.
Quintessentially, Tandis Mazwai, that is how we kick off the show today with Ingoma. And this song has made it onto the set list for a lot of her recent shows, which it's always a crowd pleaser. It's a beautiful song. She brings a wonderful connection and energy whenever she performs it. By the way, if you haven't caught her, during this last circuit run, as she's been celebrating her 50th birthday, I don't think we've had a countdown to 50. Like we've had Tandi Swamazwa's countdown to 50. I remember her on social media, on X, I think it was last month or towards the end of February, because I thought she was a Pisces baby. And my birthday came, Lyra's birthday came, and we had long gone to her concert celebrating her 50th birthday. And she was still tweeting, Uti, as my birthday draws closer, what are my plans? I had to reply and be like, feel like we've been counting down to this birthday forever. We've celebrated it now, and when is it coming? That is how we kick off the show today. On a beautifully light note, we've got lots of show. We're going to be catching up to Sibahle Mota, our SABC News reporter, having a look at what's happening, what's transpiring at the Madlanga Commission today. And then in moments in time, we're having a reflective conversation on the back of Dr. Miriam Makeba's 4th annual lecture celebrating the life and the legacy. And we're going to be in conversation with a family friend of Mama Makeba and a keynote speaker at the 4th annual lecture. Also coming up today, we're looking at taxpayers must flag SARS bridges or courts won't act. So founder of Unicus Tax Specialist is going to be having this financial adjacent conversation with us. And then we're going to be in conversation with the founder and managing director of GRIT, which is a gender rights in tech app. We'll find out more about their story. It's fast approaching 1:15. A quick pause. We come back with Sibahle Mota.
Bridget Masinga is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio.
All right, it is day 95 at the Madlanga Commission, and it started off on a little bit of a light anecdotal note this morning with the newest witness that's taken to the stand, and that's Brigadier Ngwashu, who says that he was instructed at some point to acquire sensitive documents that speak to some of the matters, particularly the murder that had happened in Sidibeng. Uspahle Mota is keeping a keen eye for us, and she's going to give us all the roundup of what has happened this morning. How are you doing, Spahle?
Good afternoon to you, Bridget, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for the time. Appreciated. I guess before we get to talking about Brigadier Ngwashu, let's just reflect a little bit on where we left off yesterday. Yesterday's proceedings running late into the evening, wrapping at about 7 p.m. last night, but not concluding in their entirety.
No, definitely. As you remember, we've had, the suspended CFO of Tshwane, Gareth Mnisi, before the Matlanga Commission, I think for a total of 4 days or something like that. And he's obviously been implicated in tender rigging at the city of Tshwane, and that he did this in connection with Sergeant Fanning Ngozi, who was not at the employ of Tshwane, as well as suspended Deputy Police Chief Umashi Dlamini. And at the heart of these allegations are the fact that they may have favored certain companies in receiving contracts at the city, over other companies. And what it has been discovered is that Ngapesheya, as well as Gubis 84 and Triotic Security Services were amongst those companies that the Matlanga Commission was looking closely to. And if you remember, Ngapesheya is linked to the brother of Sergeant Ngozi, while Triotic is linked to the deputy mayor, or was linked rather to the deputy mayor of Tshwane. And Gubis 85 Solutions was this company that was given more sites than any other company, and subsequently got the largest share of this budget for the security tender. And these were sort of under scrutiny. But at the heart of the allegations against Gareth Mnisi is him involving an ordinary civilian who was Sergeant Ngozi in sorting out payment disputes with Gubis 85 Solutions. And even, we found that Sergeant Ngozi had access to very confidential information from the city of Tshwane. And I think what the commissioners were putting is the fact that they do believe that Ngozi's relationship with, Mnisi actually extended far and beyond a friendship, but in a sense that Ngozi was able to benefit favors from Gareth Mnisi, who was the CFO of Tshwane then.
And yesterday, when we rounded up Gareth Mnisi's team, his legal counsel opted to take the commission up on an opportunity to re-examine cross-examine their client themselves. But that has been suspended for a moment, and it will resume at a later time to be rescheduled.
No, definitely. And if you remember, Bridget, his legal counsel was, protecting him as much as she could. And I think one of the questions that was asked to Mnisi by even Commissioner Stacey Baloyi, where we even saw some sort of tension with Baloyi as well as Mnisi's legal counsel, was that what was he doing in Durban for a business meeting that warranted, such a Fanning Ngozi saying that your win is my win, and we found his legal counsel interjecting that, and Stacey Baloyi saying that she'll have an opportunity to re-examine him. So there is quite a lot I suspect that she may want to re-examine him on, and that dates will be announced by the commission as soon as possible. But my understanding is that Advocate Shackleton, as well as Mrs. legal counsel, would sit down together and decide when the re-examination will take place.
Now, let's cast our eyes on this afternoon's witness, Brigadier Abraham Ngwashu. And he is on the stand today. What do we know of him?
So if you remember, Witness B had come before the Matlanga Commission saying that she had suspected that Brigadier Ngwashu actually wanted to influence and interfere in the murder of Armand Swart, who's the engineer that was gunned down, and Katiso Keti Mulife as well as 3 other suspects were actually arrested for his murder. So what we know is that it seemed like Ngwashu had approached Witness B to actually take that docket relating to that Armand Swart investigation. But he's obviously come out and defended himself, saying that this was an instruction from the Gauteng Provincial Commissioner, who had asked that they collect all the J50 arrests, dockets, and to just gather them so that they can oversee them. So he denies that it was in his personal interest, but he's also denied allegations that, there was something untoward with what he did when he went to visit Katiso Keti Molefe in jail and took some clothes as well as a meal for him when he was incarcerated for that murder. He claims that, Katiso was somebody that was who was married to his sister-in-law. So by the virtue of the fact that, they were family, Katiso was his brother-in-law, that's the reason why he would sort of go an extra mile to sort of, take all these things to him. But I get a sense that the commission will obviously shred his testimony and statements apart relating to Katiso Keti Molefe, in that he was his brother-in-law, because there are certain holes that the commissioners are already poking in his testimony.
Now, quickly, Sbahle, in our last minute and a half, this instruction, though, that Brigadier Nkwashu says that he was instructed to acquire those documents, hasn't that in the past testimonies of the commission been proven wrong?
I mean, he does say there is, communication to that gave them that directive to collect all these dockets, and upon receiving the dockets, he saw that there were these two outstanding, which included the Armand Swart docket. So that is something I think the commissioners will definitely have to be probed. But by the virtue of the fact that he's so closely linked to Katiso Keti Molefe, this was a man seen to have dropped off clothes for Katiso Keti Molefe when he was incarcerated, as well as drove a vehicle that didn't have any number plates. I mean, sort of puts him into suspicion, and as well as some other meetings that they've had. But he does admit that, by the virtue of the fact that Katiso Keti Molefe had asked to meet him because of his sister-in-law, he does get a sense that Katiso Keti Molefe tried to entice him to sort of work with him. And I think what this reveals, Bridget, is the sort of modus operandi these alleged criminal syndicates actually embark upon, where they sort of entice these police officers to say, you are reaching retirement, therefore I may have a certain opportunity for you to come and work with me. So I get a sense that this may also be explored with his testimony as as we continue after the lunch break.
Yeah. Sbahle Mota, we appreciate the time and for keeping us clued in. That was SABC News reporter Sbahle Mota bringing us the latest from the Madlanga Commission. It's gone 20 past 1 o'clock, a quick pause, and then we come back on the other side and we delve into some moments in time looking at Dr. Miriam Makeba's legacy ahead of the 4th annual lecture celebrating her life and legacy.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an Absa Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. Absa Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the Absa Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. Absa is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
The Northwest Provincial Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Premier and Finance, chaired by Honorable Nathan Oliphant, will conduct public hearings on the Division of Revenue Bill on 24 April 2026 at the Barolombo Mariba Tribal Hall, Tshidilamolomo in the Ngakamudirimolema District, Fall Reefs Hall, Ogni in the Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District, Ipelege Multipurpose Hall, Swizeraneke in the Dr. Ruth Sokomotsi Mompati District, and the Ketle Municipal Hall in Koster in the Bujanala District. All hearings start at 10. If you are unable to attend in person, you can enjoy the proceedings online via Microsoft Teams by scanning the QR code provided in the advert in newspapers or the legislature's social media pages.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, we are reflecting now reflecting in moments in time, and we're looking at the life and legacy of Dr. Miriam Makeba ahead of her 40th annual lecture. Dr. Naledi Kodu Ramobo, who is a family friend of Mama Makeba and a keynote speaker at this year's annual lecture, joins us in conversation. The University of South Africa's Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs hosts the 4th annual Miriam Makeba Public Lecture, and it's happening tomorrow at the UNISA campus in Pretoria. And this year's theme is Miriam Makeba's Soweto Blues, celebrating the life and legacy of a revolutionary and political cultural diplomat 50 years since the Soweto uprising. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Naledi, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, good afternoon.
We appreciate you and appreciate the time. And I think, firstly, maybe before we even delve into the contents of the lecture, just to get some context around your relationship with Mom Miriam Makeba, which I'm told is a relationship that really brings two families together who walked parallel roads on the journey to South Africa's liberation.
Yes, we met in 1977 in Lagos, Nigeria. It was during the time of the Festival of African Arts and Culture.
I just want to pause you there for a second as we switch lines. We're getting some static that is interrupting the conversation. Maybe we can ask you to also weigh in as you listen to this conversation on 061-410-4107. When you think back of Mom Miriam Makeba, her music, her legacy, her activism, what are some of the thoughts that come to your mind? Or what are some of the stories maybe that you've even heard from your parents or your grandparents who quite literally were in that era of life, in that era of music, and what have they shared with you about that time? 061-410-4107. A quick pause. We'll be right back.
Call SAFM now on 086 000 2032. Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, we tried to switch Dr. Naledi's line, and hopefully this one gets a little bit better for us. Dr. Naledi, you were still telling us you met Mom Miriam back in 1977 in Lagos, Nigeria.
Yes, it was during the Festival of African Arts and Culture, the second festival. The first one had been held in Dakar a few years before. So there were artists of various types in the country for the whole period of the month-long festival. And I was in Lagos because I was an intern at the General Hospital, having just finished medical school the previous year. So someone who knew I was South African, then told me that she was in town, and took me to go and introduce me to her. And it just became a relationship from then on.
I'm intrigued to to know at the time what was the energy like in Nigeria with this sort of back and forth of Pan-African leaders and thought leaders and politicians and students like yourself all converging in this space at one time.
It was a really, really hectic time. It was active. Like I said, there were people from all over, from the continent and the diaspora. There were students, there were musicians, there were craftsmen and other visitors. And there was a lot of discussion. And of course, with her prominence in the world at the time, everybody wanted to know what were her opinions, wanted to meet with her. And being the personality that she was, everybody was equal to her. It didn't matter whether you were a prime minister or a lady selling vegetables on the street. If you greeted, she would stand and talk. And of course, always talking about home and the situation here at home.
You yourself, as a young student, came to be in Nigeria because your own family was exiled and moved to Nigeria when you were just 10. Your father, for those wondering, your father being the freedom fighter Makudu Ramopo, who was a leader in the Pan-Africanist movement.
He was a founder member, one of the founder members of the PAC, and he had been a principal at the school called Banareng in Atteridgeville. So he got sacked from the job and was banned from teaching anywhere in the Republic. The funny story is that he got news that his friend, his close friend, Mr. Bob Lishwai, who was at the time the principal at Lady Selborne High, had been sacked from work and banned from teaching. So the following day, he drove from Atteridgeville to Lady Selborne to go and see Uncle Bob, as we called him, to commiserate on the situation. And on his return, he found his own letter that he had also been sacked. So this was early March in 1960. And then at that time, his very close friend, Ezekiel Mpaslele, Uncle Eskia, had already left the country and was in Nigeria. They had grown up together in Marabastad, the old Marabastad as it used to be, residential, with blacks and Indians and Chinese and so on. So they had grown up together in Marabastad, and the relationship went on and on until Uncle Ezek left for Nigeria, and the family, Auntie Ribs and children followed on. So for my dad, it was deciding whether to go to Nigeria or to Ghana, but because Uncle Ezek was already in Nigeria, that was how the decision was made. And then we followed on in May 1961.
I wanted to just pause there for a second, Dr. Naledi, just to take the headline news, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up the story of your life as well as that of Mom Miriam Makeba.
Okay.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the Constitutional Court of South Africa has ruled that the South African Human Rights Commission cannot enforce its own directives. The Independent Police Union of South Africa is calling for the precautionary suspension of the National Police Commissioner Fani Masamula, and at least 3 container ships are reported to have been targeted by gunfire in the Strait of Hormuz as Iran continues to impose restrictions on the key waterway. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
On the back of course, Thabo Mbeki's African School of Public and International Affairs hosting the 4th annual Miriam Makeba Public Lecture tomorrow, Thursday, the 23rd of April, at the UNISA campus in Pretoria, under the theme Miriam Makeba Soweto Blues, celebrating the life and legacy of a revolutionary and political cultural diplomat, 15 years since the Soweto uprising. We're reflecting back on the life and the legacy of Dr. Miriam Makeba as it coincides with that of Dr. Naledi Godu Ramopo. So your family finds themselves in Nigeria alongside other freedom fighters and exiled South Africans, building community in this new and, I guess, wonderful, adventurous land. And for yourself, as I'm just trying to imagine as a young 10-year-old, the kind of consciousness that you and awareness that you had at that time, interacting in conversation and in experience with leaders who went on really to rewrite Africa's history, whether in the case of Mom Miriam through her talents as an arts and cultural activist, or through your dad, your uncles, For yourself as a 10-year-old, being in these moments as you reflect now, was there consciousness of the intersections that you had and the interactions that you had, and also what was being left behind at home at that time?
Yes. With my father being away the first day, it was not really much because we did follow on quickly, and my grandparents were also there. Kukwen and Tatemoholo were also in Atteridgeville. But getting to Nigeria, it was a completely different place. We were excited that we were going to now be with Dad. And being children, we integrate into the community. We lived in eastern Nigeria in a town, quite a big town called Onitsha, and very traditional also. And I must say, the contacts we made then, I still have friends from my childhood, who are also just old like me now. But we just integrated. But at the same time, the parents, our parents, and even the parents of the other exiled children were always reminded that we are going home. All the time. That people get used to this place, but you must know we are going home. So we got to meet other children, other families who had also kept on coming into Nigeria, and went to school, studied, but at all the time with that consciousness that we have to go home, and seeing all these uncles and aunties telling us about home and how things have to change and all that. You know. One thing I remember that caused a lot of pain in growing up in Atteridgeville. The families with the Mosenekers were very close, and Justice Dekang is a bit few years older than me. His father had been my godfather, and the families were very close. So it was heartbreaking for me when I was like 13 years for my parents to tell me that Dekang was in prison. It was really, really, really hurtful. But it was one of those things that you had to understand as to what was going on in the country.
Whilst you were in Nigeria, you also got to meet the 76 group, the students of some of the students of the 76 uprising.
Yes, that was also in 77. They came into Nigeria in 1977, and fortunately, the Nigerian government were taking care. They had allocated them a house in Lagos. So that was how I got to meet them. And even after I finished my internship and moved to the north, to northern Nigeria, to the place called Kaduna, which used to be the capital of the northern region. In those days, Nigeria had 3 regions: the north, the east, and the west, before they broke up into different provinces, just like us here. So I worked, as a senior house officer, I was in Kaduna at the government hospital, and my parents were about 45 minutes drive away, when my father lectured at the College of Education of the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. So as it happened, there were also students, the 76 students who had also come mostly into the College of Technology at the same place where I was. And of course, there were lots of younger ones who remained in Lagos and went to the other places in the West and in Western Nigeria and so on to be in high school, because they had not completed high school. So the ones who had completed were at the universities and College of Technology at the time. So we were away from home, but we still had links with people from home. Strong links as such, as to say.
2026 also marks the 5th anniversary of Mom Miriam Makeba's speech, that iconic speech delivered at the United Nations.
At the United Nations, yes.
Let's reflect back on her legacy as a Pan-Africanist, freedom fighter, a cultural diplomat, really, and her ability to use her platform to magnify the issues of Africans in general, but South Africans in particular.
Yes, she combined the two so well, because she had met with virtually all the important figures in the U.S., people like, of course, people were going on the march, on that famous march, and with people like Minister Farrakhan, who is still very active now, and he actually was in Lagos at the time, and she introduced us to Minister Farrakhan. But the fact that she was such a cordial person, she would be able to talk to an ordinary person and to the VIPs and influential people. So she was able to make the links, especially for the 76 group, to all these influential figures, and all in the effort to affect what was happening at home and the situation at home.
Mm.
So it was not just cultural, but cultural and political all the time, but without pressing it and forcing it onto people, because people just wanted to listen, wanted to hear all the time.
I actually want us to go back into that moment in time and hear and be reminded of those powerful words as delivered by Dr. Miriam Makeba.
You mean in education?
At the UN, yes. We're going to play the clip now.
Oh, okay. Are you going to play the clip now? Okay, I'll listen then. Is it coming on?
On behalf of all the members of the committee, I should like to welcome Miss Miriam Makeba, and I should like to ask her to make her statement now.
I ask you and all the leaders of the world, would you act differently? Would you keep silent and do nothing if you were in our place? Would you not resist if you were allowed no rights in your own country because the color of your skin is different to that of the rulers? And if you were punished for even asking for equality? Mr. Chairman, there is already too much hate in my country. I am afraid that if the world keeps silent and the government is madly proceeding with more brutality and is trying to take the lives of our most beloved leaders and boys in their teens, you cannot stop the hatred from overflowing. I appeal to you and through you to all the countries of the world to do everything you can to stop the coming tragedy. I appeal to you to save the lives of our leaders, to empty the prisons of all those who should never have been there, and help us win our right to human dignity.
And that was the clip from that iconic delivery at the United Nations. And this fourth annual lecture honoring Dr. Miriam Makeba's legacy, Mum Miriam Makeba's legacy, comes also at an interesting cross-section in South Africa's history right now, because not only are we observing the 50th anniversary of that speech as delivered at the United Nations, but it's also the 50th anniversary of the June 16, 1976 uprisings. It's also the 70th anniversary of the Women's March to the Union Buildings in 1956. And of course, we know South Africa observed the 30th anniversary of the Constitution. All of this comes together at a very important time when we use this moment to introspect and to gauge the progress we've made, but also perhaps the challenges and the gaps that are still left to be filled.
Yes, of course. And the way things are right now, it appears that it is more, well, there's a lot achieved, but the challenges are quite major on all grounds, at all levels, and especially affecting the ordinary man on the street. Because from what we understand and what we feel, the change was supposed to have happened at all levels, but it is still a society on 2 or 3 different levels. I keep telling my friends and telling people that, you know, if my grandmother came back to the country, she would be shocked to find that there are families going to bed hungry when there was no hunger in the past and there was no joblessness in the past. So there is a lot that we still have to work on. And we have now, even in our African society, there's such big splits that they're super rich and the professionals just managing and the rest who are just struggling. It's very sad that in this country at this time, we still have children who have malnutrition, under 5-year-olds have malnutrition. And that's a very important stage at which even the brain is developing. And after 5 years old, even if you do get fed properly, it's not the same anymore. You have lost some amount of, of the brain power.
Absolutely.
So those are the things that really hurt. Looking at what our society has now become.
Absolutely. Dr. Naledi, we'll leave it there for this afternoon, but we appreciate the time and you going down moments in time with us, reflecting back on your relationship and the period spent in the orbit of Mom Miriam Makeba. That lecture is happening tomorrow at UNISA's campus in Pretoria under the theme Miriam Makeba's Soweto Blues, celebrating the life and legacy of a revolutionary and political and cultural diplomat. In fact, we also have the song, but we're going to play a snippet of the song before we go into a break. Okay, we're going to play a snippet of the song before we go into break, which is really a song that on the other side of the break, which really encapsulates that moment as it pertained to 1976.
Investing shouldn't feel risky. It should give you security and good returns. Earn up to 7.25% interest per annum with an ABSA Cash Invest Tracker for an investment of 100,000 rands or more. Your capital is guaranteed with immediate access to your funds. That's minimum risk, maximum benefit. ABSA Private Banking customers can invest from just R1. Open via the ABSA Banking app, a branch, a private banker, or 0860 111 515. Your story matters. ABSA is an authorized financial services provider. T's and C's apply.
This Freedom Month, we reflect, we remember, and we celebrate how far we've come. 30 years into democracy, South Africa continues to shape a future grounded in justice, equality, and opportunity for all. Under the theme, Freedom and the Rule of Law. 30 years of democratic citizenship. SAFM will bring you all things freedom, the voices, the stories, and the conversations that matter. Join us as we honor the journey and explore what freedom means today. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Top Billing is back with a bold new chapter and fresh new faces leading the way. Get ready to experience the world of luxury, travel, design and inspiring stories with their dynamic new presenters. From Zozibini Tunzi to Brioni Govender, Arno Grief and Sinemivuyo Mpulo, bringing their unique style, energy and perspective to every moment. The all-new season of Top Billing premieres on S3 Thursday, the 30th of April at 7 p.m. with repeats on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. on SABC1. Top Billing is back and you don't want to miss it.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
The children got a letter from the master. It said no more Xhosa, Sotho, no more Zulu.
I think we don't play the song enough. We definitely don't play this song enough. Miriam Makeba coming through with Soweto Blues commemorating the 76 uprisings. We're going to take a quick pause and then we come back on the other side and we get into a conversation around stages, pages, screens and more.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury and inspiration, from breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. Tune in to the new season of Top Billing on S3 Thursdays at 7 p.m, starting from the 30th of April, with repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC1. You can also stream Top Billing live on SABC Plus, available on all app stores and on your smart TV. Top Billing, the best of the good life.
Stages, pages, screens, and more on The Full Circle.
All right, let's get into a theatrical celebration of South Africa's 12 official languages with the co-founder of Pop Art. Hayley Evans joins us. How are you doing this afternoon, Hayley?
Hi, Bridget. I'm great. I hope you are too.
I'm awesome. So Pop Art Theatre, in partnership with Joburg Theatre Space.com, are running the third annual iteration of the 12, is it 12 on 12? 12-12 Festival.
We just say 12-12.
The 12-12 Festival. Tell me, firstly, I guess, tell me the genesis and the background story around the 12-12 Festival.
Well, this is the third year of the festival, so it's our third iteration of the festival. And we started it because in theatre we find, and particularly in the fringe theatre that Pop Art is interested in producing, we find that there's such a different expression that comes when people are performing in languages that they're comfortable with or languages that are their first languages. So we wanted to create a festival that would challenge an audience perception in terms of their own understanding of watching theatre in any of the 12 official languages. And we really wanted to curate a festival that would push the idea of theatre as a visual language that helps us in turn then start to understand the work that's on stage and realize that that gap is not so far.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you if language is often seen as a barrier in theatre and how we engage with theatre, because and also, is that just our own sort of subjective assessment to things? Because I know people will go, for instance, to an opera and they'll watch that production in a completely foreign language that they can't even relate to, but the story does the speaking without you having to really understand word for word.
Absolutely, and that's what we want. We want people to challenge the idea around that, because it is a way in which we find our audience divide themselves. And from my personal experience, having watched work like this for 15 years on the trot, like I also see like my understanding as I move in the world also shifts, because I get the cultural context of things. And it's because it's slowly kind of been absorbed as I've kind of broadened my taste in theatre. And so we're really asking audiences to give it a go. So each evening has got 3 languages each. So we imagine that people will come to a program with at least one language that they understand, but then to sit and like go, oh, wow, there is a person performing in South African Sign Language, and I know what the story is. Maybe I can communicate better.
How do you guys go about selecting the year's short form pieces? Because I can also imagine that just the selection process alone is vast, varied, and can really be a challenge. I'm just thinking about the magnitude of work. And is there magnitude of work produced in all 12 languages?
Well, I think part of the intention of the festival is to stimulate people making work in a language that they thought, I'm Chitsonga, but I can't perform in my own language. So then they come up with a concept that is a 12-minute piece that can easily be an experiment for them. So that's part of what we encourage artists to do, is to make work for the festival as part of their own experiments. But we do an open call out to all our communities, and then we sit with sometimes 300 or 400 applications that we go through. Myself, Christopher Sabuka, and Samkelesiwe Kuzwayo are the curators of the festival. We sit and we actually blind choose. So we don't know anything about the makers. We just read the synopsis, and then we ask a very pointed question to anyone who applies, is why does this work belong in a festival about language? And then we try to see the common themes, and we try to pull work that makes sense together so that the festival then is also well curated.
I'm interested also, just the nosy individual in me, interested to know what becomes the answer, to that very pointed question. Why does a particular piece of work belong in a festival about language? What's been the reflections given back?
Oh, they are very varied. And we particularly ask that for the more common languages. So the top 4 spoken languages, English, Afrikaans, isiXhosa, isiZulu, those are works that theatre is made more commonly in. And we're asking, don't just give us a piece that you are already making. Why does this piece talk to language? So, for example, the English piece we chose this year, the performer argued that she is a Muslim woman, and she said, where do I sit in the 12 official languages? Where is the representation of me? So I would like to put forward this piece for English.
That in itself becomes a whole different conversation, right? About womanhood, religion, Islam in particular, representation being seen. I'm now going down the rabbit hole of what her response then solicits we engage as creative practitioners and people who are adjacent to the world.
Yeah.
Haley, you got me thinking.
Good. That's exactly. We want you thinking, we want you feeling, we want you understanding.
Yeah.
That's really moving towards common understanding. So
Absolutely.
that's what the celebration is. So, I hate using the buzzword diversity, so I always say it's a celebration of the effort that it takes for us as South Africans to really communicate and understand one another from all our points of views.
Absolutely. So the festival is 4 days long, 3 shows per day at Pop Art, all evening shows except for one matinee show.
Correct. So it's actually happening at the joburgtheatrespace.com. So it's part of our partnership with the youth development at joburgtheatrespace.com. And then each evening is 3 12-minute pieces. So the program ends up being around 45 to 60 minutes. And then on the first evening, which is on the 23rd of April, we have a bonus act, which is Askis, which is a piece about language, only using the word Askis, but it's a dance piece as well, with Teresa Putimojela and Tami Mojela, who was the Standard Bank Young Artist for Dance 2 years ago.
Yeah. So that is tomorrow. That is the first of the performances opening up tomorrow, the 23rd of April at 7 p.m. at the joburgtheatrespace.com in collaboration with Pop Art Theatre. And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Web Tickets is where we go to get tickets for the shows.
Web Tickets is absolutely where you go. Each event is listed under a different link, so I can't give you a clear link. But if you go onto Pop Art's Instagram, which is Pop Art JHB, there is a link tree that takes you to all the different evenings.
Wonderful stuff. Well, looking forward to this. Sounds quite interesting indeed, and quite the conversation starter as well. That was Haley Evans, co-founder of Pop Art, and you can catch those productions being staged and presented as part of 1212 Festival at the Joburg Theatre. Web Tickets is where you can go to get your ticketing, and the shows are running from tomorrow, the 23rd of April, until the 26th of April. So taking us into Sunday, the entire weekend, 3 shows per evening for you to take part in and engage with. We're going to take a quick pause before we get to the top of the hour news with Ondelambana. And then we come back on the other side and we're going to have a conversation around perhaps some flags around SARS bridges and things that courts won't act upon. We're going to find out what is inside this barrel of conversation. And then we're also going to catch up with the founders of GRIT, which is the Gender Rights in Tech app. That's happening in the second hour of the show.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
What do you make of their recommendations?
General Rode was acting on instruction. He makes a submission to IPED. I was informed of what had transpired by the president, and I was instructed by the president. So if IPED is going to find General Rode as an individual or who is guilty of some crimes, it must then by extension go to the individual who gave a wrong directive.
ATM, me is the ATM spokesperson, Zaman Chona.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Thank you, Bridget. On the top stories, Concord rules on SAHRC's directives and NPA reacts to court's decision on Sergeant Nkosi. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The Constitutional Court has told the South African Human Rights Commission that its absence of legally binding powers does not diminish its constitutional importance. Handing down judgment today, the Constitutional Court ruled that the SAHRC cannot enforce its own directives. The Commission had approached the court to appeal a Supreme Court of Appeal ruling that it cannot issue legally binding directives. In a unanimous judgment, the court emphasized that although the Commission cannot legally enforce its findings, it is not toothless. Justice Stephen Majid.
The Human Rights Commission is far from toothless. Its influence lies in the deployment of the powers conferred upon it by the Constitution and the SAHRC Act, including the exercise of extensive investigative authority, the support of litigation, the shaping of the conduct of state officials, the informing of public debate, and the exertion of normative pressure on organs of states and private actors alike. Properly understood, the SAHRC's strength lies precisely in its capacity to act in ways that courts cannot.
The National Prosecuting Authority in Gauteng has hailed the Pretoria North Magistrates Court decision to dismiss suspended Police Sergeant Fanny Nkosi's bail application. The matter has been postponed to May 21st. Nkosi was arrested following a raid at his Pretoria North home where dockets, explosives, ammunition and cash were found earlier this month. NPA spokesperson Lumka Mahanjana.
We welcome the decision by the court to deny Sergeant Nkosi bail. This is the right step towards the direction of criminal justice system. It proves our case, hence we opposed his bail application. The court also found that he failed to discharge to the court to convince the court that it was in the interest of justice that he be denied bail. We opposed his bail application and told the court that Nkosi cannot be released on bail because he poses a danger to society. He is a flight risk. The matter was postponed to the 21st of May for further investigations.
The Independent Police Union of South Africa is calling for the precautionary suspension of the National Police Commissioner, Fanny Masemula. Masemula is facing charges related to violating the Public Finance Management Act. This is in relation to a controversial 360 million rand health tender linked to alleged criminal kingpin Vusibuzi Ketmatlala. Masemula appeared in the Pretoria Magistrate Court yesterday and his matter has been postponed to the 13th of next month. The union's president, Bethuel Nguna.
If the state alleges that he failed PMFA duties, where 360 million tender is involved and with other police officers being arrested, keeping him in office may create a perception of conflict and may also raise double standards concern as junior members get suspended immediately for misconduct. And also public trust has to be restored.
The Limpopo Transport Department says brake failure led to the bus crash on the N1 near Louis Trichat in the early hours of this morning. The crash happened at the Chambutsi Valley near the Ingwe Curve on the mountainous stretch when a Zimbabwe-bound bus lost control and veered into a ditch. One passenger died and 3 sustained serious injuries. Department spokesperson Chifiwa Dali says it's concerning that it is the third bus crash at the same area in 6 months.
Preliminary reports indicate that a bus was traveling from Johannesburg en route to Harare with 6 staff crew members and 8 passengers. It is alleged that the driver lost control. From the reports, it's indicated that the bus brakes failed, horribly so, and it resulted in a horror accident. This time it's on the right, on your way from Gauteng, which is very abnormal.
At least 3 container ships are reported to have been targeted by gunfire in the Strait of Hormuz as Iran continues to impose restrictions on the key waterway. The BBC has verified the identities of 2 ships, one Greek-owned and the other owned by a UAE-based company. The BBC's Sebastian Asher has the details.
Hours after President Trump announced an extension of the ceasefire, Iran seems to be stepping up its control of the Strait of Hormuz, which has been a key obstacle in making progress towards a peace deal. Gunboats from Iranian Revolutionary Guards are reported to have intercepted vessels trying to cross the waterway. No casualties or major damage have been reported, but the move will put added pressure on the renewed truce, while also underlining the risk the current deadlock runs of allowing the conflict to reignite. In his latest comments, President Trump portrayed the closure of the Strait of Hormuz as an economic own goal for Tehran, but it's the political pressure it brings to bear on the US that Tehran seems intent on maximizing.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court has told the South African Human Rights Commission that its absence of legally binding powers does not diminish its constitutional importance. I'm Mundela Mbara for SFM News Headlines at 2:30.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. As we celebrate 90 years of existence, SAFM takes you back to the voices that shaped a nation.
Xolani Gwala will be back again for you 6 to 9 Monday here on SAFM.
And
thanks, Xolani. Good morning and welcome to Morning Talk with me, Kim Gabadeli.
The name is Bongi Kwala. Good to be with you till midday today. Let's engage South Africa.
Welcome to Morning Talk on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader, with me, Rowena Bird.
90 years of trusted voices. This is SAFM. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Everything that you want, everything that you need, girl, I want you to have, and you want that for me. For all the love in our hearts and all the fights that we start, girl, I want you to know it's not all your fault. Baby, you're so good to me, always making changes, but I need time on my own. 'Cause I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. That's why I'm so wrong for you. 'Cause I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. That's why I'm so wrong for you. I'm not good for you. You're not good for me. I wanna laugh late at night. You wanna talk about life when I want to go out and you want to stay in. Though at times I get rude, I take it all out on you. Girl, I want you to know it's not all your fault. Baby, me. Always making changes, but I need time on my own. I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. That's why I'm so wrong for you. I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. That's why I'm so wrong for you. Baby, I feel so good. I want you. Yes, I do. I don't wanna say goodbye, but it hurts the more I try to be someone else for you. The way you've been trying to, it ain't right and it ain't fair. When there could be someone there who's everything you dream and all that you want. Baby, you're so good to me. Always making changes, but I need time on my own. 'Cause I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. I'm so wrong for you. I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. I'm so wrong for you. I know that I can love you, baby. That's why I'm so wrong for you. I'm so wrong for you. You. Wish I could love you, but I'm so wrong for you. For you. For you. For you. I'm so wrong for you. For you. La 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 la. No. No.
Loyiso Bala coming through with Wrong For You. A little bit of South African R&B just to set the tone, set the mood for you. I don't know what mood, but we're setting a mood. 10 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, right here. We're going to have a conversation now with Nico Tehran, who's the founder of Unicus Tax Specialist SA. A recent case law is sending a very clear message that SARS cannot ignore the rules that govern how tax disputes are handled, but taxpayers must actively enforce those rules. So we'll find out what is the law, what it said historically, what it says now, and how that gets to impact you. Nico, how are you doing today?
Hi, Bridget. Fine, thanks, and you?
Thank you so much for the time. I'm great. Thank you. All right. Let us get into, I guess, historically, what was the law and what did it speak to? And obviously, some clarity as to this recent amendment to the law, and maybe even a backdrop of how this moment and this change came to be.
Right, so I think, Bridget, it's not so much that there's necessarily been a change in the law. I think there's been a change in taxpayers' responses to SARS' aggressiveness. Historically, years ago, before 2012, there was a set of tax code rules that read differently, but that's so long ago, I don't want to go back to that. The issue in particular here is it seems that taxpayers are just more aggressively identifying breaches by SARS of dispute resolution rules and actively raising them. And I think it might be because taxpayers' appetite or their feeling has changed slightly, or it's because SARS is under so much pressure to collect that they are pushing the boundaries a little bit more than what they used to. And I think that's why we're seeing this kind of trend, if you will.
So you say this also speaks in part to taxpayers' participation in the whole South African revenue services system.
Correct. I think it's important that, in my experience at least, procedural defects in SARS' case is not going to correct itself. But then the trouble is identifying procedural defects in SARS' case requires a detailed understanding of the law and of tax procedural law, because it's very nuanced. It's not as if I can say this is clearly You can see it from a mile away. You need to know what the law is, and you need to be able to say, yes, taxpayer. See here, if you look at this sentence here and you look at what they said here, it's not the same thing. So it's very easy for a layperson to miss, and so taxpayers are at a slight disadvantage in some instances.
So talk to us in practical terms now. This amendment, perhaps, or this new case law, in practical terms, what does it speak to? What does it mean? And who does it affect?
I think it affects any taxpayer who is aggrieved by an assessment by SARS or a decision that SARS has taken, a taxpayer that goes into the process of challenging SARS' assessments, because taxpayers are allowed to do that if they're aggrieved by the assessment. And there's a whole process that unfolds, and that process applies to all taxpayers who are challenging SARS' assessments. And so this is something that affects everybody who is going to take on SARS. And what is important to understand is it affects the taxpayer ultimately in the form of a tax liability that, if you called out the procedural breach, might not exist. Whereas if you don't, you might end up having to fork out this tax liability, despite the fact that there might have been, or the basis for the assessment might not have been correct.
Are they patterns, perhaps, that you are observing based on recent court judgments or recent behaviors that you can share with us?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. Can you repeat that?
I was saying, are there patterns perhaps that you're also observing?
Oh, patterns.
Yes,
yes
that
yes.
are based on recent judgments perhaps.
Yeah, there are patterns emerging. It seems to me that SARS more often, at least so we can see from the judgment, it seems more often that they are trying to fix, assessments that are not really, it seems, all that well substantiated later on in dispute resolution processes when we start getting to litigation, when it should have been done properly at the start. I think that is a pattern that I'm seeing. I'm also seeing a pattern, if we talk about the broader concept of procedural law, where SARS, for example, would take collection action when perhaps it's not entitled to do so. It takes the service of a legal notice on SARS often to get that undone, and it does undo it. They do then fix the mistake. But it certainly seems that they are being more aggressive, and it certainly seems that taxpayers would need to be responding in kind, not always, but often, to make sure that SARS is kept in check and that they do not, for example, take a collection action that they're not allowed to take.
Now, for us normal taxpayers who aren't tax practitioners, there are a lot of people who do their own taxes. I would never dare. Talk to us about perhaps how these folks, the vigilance that they need to sort of deploy when dealing with their taxes, and the kind of matters that maybe they can double back to SARS to have a relook at some of the decisions that were taken without any proper reasoning, perhaps, or and the avenues that can be challenged at.
Yeah, so I think a nice mindset, I suppose, that people can take, and could be something that I suppose people could be vigilant for, is to not assume that whatever SARS has done is correct. Yes, oftentimes what they're doing is correct. I'm not suggesting that they're always doing something wrong, but they certainly aren't always doing everything correct either. And I think what is important for taxpayers to question, at least, is to say, well, look, I know this is SARS, and SARS is a large organization, but is what they've done here correct? If they've changed an assessment, you originally had say, for example, a refund assessment, SARS raises an assessment to wipe out that refund, you must raise the question and say, well, is SARS correct? And if not, then you must follow the correct procedures to dispute that assessment or that decision that they've taken. And so I think the most important thing is question. But question, and I think what is important is not to just question for the sake of questioning, question to properly understand, and then if you're taking issue, to follow the correct process and procedure, because this is all very rigid in terms of the process that you must follow to challenge the assessments.
Now, there are three cases in particular that my producers wanted to unpack a little bit further this afternoon. And I think maybe we start with this one, Ferreira versus Commissioner for SARS. What was the circumstances around that and, ultimately the judgment there?
Well, so what is important there is that it revolved around something that we call suspension of payment applications, which sounds very fancy, right? But what it means is we all know the rule with SARS is pay now and argue later, right? But there's an exception to this rule where you can say to SARS, listen, I'm going to argue, will you please suspend my obligation to pay this whilst my objection is pending? And then you ask them this, we call it a suspension of payment request. And SARS must then make a decision as to whether they will grant that, in other words, make an exception to the pay now, argue later rule or not. But that decision that they must make is regulated by the Tax Administration Act, and their discretion is determined by the provisions of the Tax Administration Act. So what happened there is the taxpayer said to SARS, okay, look, I'm disputing this liability, which is about half a billion rand, I think it was. And they said, look, I can't pay you R500 million whilst we wait for one day for someone to determine if you are right or I'm right. So I'll ask you to suspend the obligation to pay this until we eventually find out who's right? And SARS said, no, I'm not going to do that. And the taxpayer then said, well, hang on, why not? What is the basis for it? Because the taxpayer said, look, one of the things that you must consider, SARS, to whether you will allow me this request to make this exception for me, is whether I offered adequate security. So in the form, so I'll say I owe you R500 million. Here's R1 billion worth of shares as security. I don't want to pay you in cash, but I can offer the shares so that I don't have to liquidate the shares and sell them. And what SARS said there is they ultimately said no, they're not going to allow it. The taxpayer must pay it now. They're not going to make an exception. And then they took it on review to the High Court, and the High Court said, well, SARS, you should have allowed this taxpayer, because when you look at what the section says, it says one of the things you must consider is whether they tendered security. And they did tender security. In fact, SARS accepted that the value of the security tendered was almost double the value of the debt, the tax in dispute. And so the court said, well, SARS was wrong. They didn't procedurally engage in a manner that is fair, and they didn't consider the relevant factor being the fact that they accepted the security. Suspension of payment applications is a very difficult thing to and it's very crucial for the taxpayers as well, because it affects their tax clearance status. For some people, it affects their ability to trade because they're not compliant. But there, the court said to SARS, no, SARS, you can't say that the taxpayers offered you security of double the amount of tax in dispute, but yet you still want him to pay the tax now until the dispute is resolved. That's not how the rules work. You must apply your minds and look at the rules, and one of the rules is look at whether they tendered security, and you didn't do that.
All right. So I want us to just pause here, take a break. We'll come back on the other side, and maybe we'll get into the Erasmus matter versus the Commissioner for SARS, as well as the BASF versus, is it the CSARS? But you'll come back and you'll let me know if that is an acronym or not. 20 past 2 o'clock is the time on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga.
63-year-old Almero knows all about saving with Outsurance.
We do save 417 Rand. That's about 5,000 Rand a year.
That's an awesome saving on Almero's 2021 Ford Ranger.
And there's an out bonus that you get if you don't claim for 3 years. I am really looking forward to it.
How much money could Outsurance save you? Get a quote now. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. Licensed insurer in FSP. TCs and information online.
Kathy Mutlatana on the National Briefing.
Rashida, why do you think it's taken so long?
Our justice system is failing us on the whole. Because we are dealing with so many tragedies out there, it is just not true. I am a human rights activist. I believe in humanity. Some of our parents died by the wayside. Nobody can answer us to say why it is taking so long. Why must we go and protest? Why must we go and beg for justice? It was clear as daylight that this patient was murdered.
Rashida Landis, mother to one of the survivors of the Life Esidimeni tragedy.
This is Kathy Mutlatana on the National Briefing.
Top Billing brings you the very best in lifestyle, luxury, and inspiration, from breathtaking homes and dream destinations to exclusive access to the people shaping culture and success. This is where style meets substance and every story shines. Tune into the new season of Top Billing on S3 Thursdays at 7 p.m. starting from the 30th of April, with repeats on Tuesdays at 9:30 p.m. on SABC 1. You can also stream Top Billing live on SABC Plus, available on all app stores and on your smart TV. Top Billing, the best of the good life.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
All right, we're trying to get a better understanding around some of the court matters that have been presented that ultimately impact how you engage with the South African Revenues Services, aka SARS, and how they go on to further empower you as an individual as well as your organization if you ever have to take matters up on dispute. We've got Nico Theron joining us, founder of Unicus Tax Specialist SA. And Nico, we're about to get into Erasmus versus the Commissioner for SARS, a case that that was presented at the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Yeah, so this is an important judgment. It is unique in the sense that the issue and dispute revolved around what we call a GAR assessment. Now, that also sounds very complicated, but it stands for the General Anti-Avoidance Rules, where SARS had applied this special set of anti-avoidance rules to raise an assessment. And then when the matter reached, eventually when the dispute, because the taxpayer said, no, I'm not happy with this, and then the taxpayer objected to this assessment and went through the process. And then SARS later on said, but they're changing some of the basis for their reliance on the GAR. They're changing some of the facts, and they're making new determinations at the litigation stage. So they're changing the basis for their assessment halfway through the fight. And in the Supreme Court of Appeal, the court said, well, you can't use the tax code rules to change or to alter the limits of the empowering provisions, and that sounds very complicated, but in short, it says, the court said, you can't use tax procedural law to make assessments and to change your case midway through. You must get it right the first time around. That's effectively the message in Erasmus. It took the taxpayer to get all the way to the SCA to get the point across or to get the case in his favour. But that is effectively the message there. And what I think the broader message to take from that is to say, well, SARS doesn't always get it right at the start, because if they did get it right at the start, why would they want to make changes later on, right? And it just comes back to the same question: is don't assume that what SARS has done is always right. I'm not suggesting it's always wrong either, but I'm saying don't make the assumption that it's always right.
And, you know, as you reiterate that message, I think a lot of South Africans, myself included, because it's one of the few institutions that still run optimally in this country, that we don't really question a lot of the decisions and the actions that are taken by SARS. But you also, guard against that, because you say courts don't monitor SARS conduct on their own. And if a taxpayer does not identify a procedural flaw, raise it and pursue the correct remedy, then the issue may never be properly considered.
That's right. And that is unfortunately, what complicates matters for taxpayers, I think, to some degree, or to a large degree, is SARS, the courts are not going to, of its own, say, hang on, SARS, there was a breach here of the rules. If the taxpayer doesn't take the right advice and doesn't bring it to SARS's attention properly, and then if that fails, doesn't then bring it to a court, then it will be left unchecked. And taxpayers tend to believe that you can't. Some taxpayers, I suppose, not all, but sometimes tend to believe you can't. You can't question and you can't send it, but you must. Because if you don't, you might find that you're pulling on the shorter end of the stick. So I think the message is, one, it's difficult to identify whether SARS is doing something wrong. It's certainly not something that is easily identifiable, and it's not something that I think is fair to say happens everywhere all the time. But it is certainly something that happens, and it's certainly a fair thing to say, well, question what has happened. And if you don't know whether what had happened, get the appropriate advice, so that you can look at whether or not this was done properly or improperly, or correctly or incorrectly, and so that you can, if necessary, then enforce your rights, because it's not going to happen on its own.
I want us to quickly touch on is it the BASF
versus SARS,
yes. We literally have a minute, 30 seconds.
Right. So, long story short, it is again one of those instances where SARS was changing horses mid-race. They had said, I'm going to tax the taxpayer I'm raising the assessment to say you pay tax on basis A, and then later when the matter reached litigation, they said, no, it's actually basis B. And the court said, hang on, you can't do that when we are litigating already. You already pinned your colours to the mast, as it were, when you raise the assessment. You shouldn't be changing horses or changing your colours. And that is the message in BA. Can't do that, which is what they tried to do in BASF versus SARS. And then the taxpayer said, you can't. They took it to court, and the court said, yes, SARS, you can't do that.
Well, listen, I think we've gotten all the necessary information, and hopefully it's of service to someone there who might be engaged with SARS on a matter at the moment. Nico Thoron, thank you for the time, founder of Unicus Tax Specialist in South Africa. It's about a minute less to go before the bottom of the hour. Onde Lambana is going to bring you the 2:30 headlines, and then we'll go straight from there into our kids programming by way of Kids Quarter before we come back. And we touch base with the folks at GRIT, which is the Gender Rights in Tech app.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the SAHRC has raised concerns of possible delays in handling victims' cases as the Constitutional Court ruled that they have no legal powers to enforce their own directives. The National Prosecuting Authority in Gauteng has hailed the Pretoria North Magistrates Court's decision to dismiss suspended police surgeon Fanny Nkosi's bail application. And the Gauteng Office of Consumer Affairs has welcomed amendments to the Consumer Protection Act, which places the onus on businesses instead of consumers to prevent unwanted direct marketing. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Are we ready for a real conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. This program is brought to you by SABC Education. And if you miss any of our programs, you can catch up anytime on the SABC Plus app or on the SABC Plus website, www.sabcplus.com. Brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hello friends and happy Wednesday. Welcome to another exciting episode of Kids Corner. Today is Earth Day, also known as Mother Earth Day. Do you know what Earth Day is all about? Why do you think it's important to take care of our planet? What small things can you do every day to help the Earth? How can you encourage your friends and family to care for the environment too? Alright friends, let's hear from some of our friends while you share your answers with the people next to you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Naled Matiba from Shuluzan Maisela Primary School. Yes, I do know what Mother Earth Day is. It is about the protection of the environment and sustainability. I love Mother Earth Day because it can help everyone to know something about this special day. It is important because our planet needs healthiness, cleanness, and protection for human beings and also for animals and plants. I will help by picking up the papers, making sure that the rivers or oceans are clean, and by also helping cleaning the houses. Turn off unused plugs, switch off light during the day, and by sometimes not cooking on the stove. They will see from me. When I sweep the yard and wash the dishes or maybe clean the windows, they will learn from me, and next time it will be them that is doing all the things during Mother Earth Day. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Samgelsiyo Mukhalwane. I am 12 years old and I'm from Shuluzan Maisela Primary School. Yes, it is about environmental protection and sustainability because we depend on it and we have no backup plan. We must save water and keep the environment clean. Shorter flashes and switch off screens or light during the day. I must lead by example and teach them how water and electricity will benefit us in the next 100 years. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Bonam Mhlala from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School in the 7th grade. Yes, I do. It is about the environment protection, sustainability, and taking care of our planet. It is important to take care of our planet because as human beings, we need fresh air that came from plants. And we must also take care of our plants because they give us food and clean air. The small things I can do every day is that I can pick up papers at home or at school. We must not overuse water and take short showers, and we must switch off bulbs and when not used. Also switch off TV if not watched by anyone. I can lead by example and wash the dishes, mop the floor or plant vegetables in the garden to show that taking care of the earth is important. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Zinje Mashango. I'm 12 years old from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, it is about environmental protection and sustainability. It is important because our planet is our home. Carry a reusable bag and stop polluting the water or rivers. Take short shower, use energy efficient bulb. By being a good example and encourage them to know how water and electricity is important to us. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Liseding Gele. I'm from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, I do know what Mother Day is. It is about the protection of the environment and sustainability. It's important because we rely on many things, like trees. They give us clean, fresh air. Also the oceans. That's where life is also found. We also rely on land to plant some trees and some vegetables. I can volunteer to help the community by cleaning the roads and by planting, gardening, washing my school clothes sometimes, not to make my parents have more extra chores. Not overuse water, take a short shower and short flushes for in case. Also, do not use electricity as well, most of the time. You must save it by turning off the lights while needed and plugging out the stove or TV if not watched. I can lead by example to show that taking care of our earth is important because it gives us life. If we let our earth be destroyed, there will be no life for us. Thank you.
My name is Nathan Ranana. I'm 11 years old from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School. Yes, I know it is about environment protection and sustainability. It is important because we need food, clean water, and our planet is our home. You must not litter to the rivers and oceans. You must take short showers and use a cup to drink. You must switch off the lights during the day. You teach them how to save water and to not litter anywhere.
Greetings to you all. My full name is Mpole Bepe from Shuluzane Maisela Primary School in the 7th grade. Yes, I do. It is about the environment protection, sustainability, to keep it clean so we live in a healthy place. It is important because we must stay in a clean place and breathe fresh, clean air, so that we do not have to breathe in a dirty air and drink dirty water. We do not have to stay in a dirty environment. I could help Earth Day by picking up the papers and what thing I see on the floor. Not wasting things like water and electricity. Use it for what we actually need to do with it.
How I save water and electricity at home and school. I turn the lights off if nobody is using it, and do not playing with water, such as throwing each other with water and building mud with it. And at school, not turning on anything like lights. I would encourage them to take our environment clean, because if they do not, our environment will not work out for us. The environment will start smelling bad and changing the air we breathe. The air will be strong and will not breathe well. And the papers on the floor will even be more papers if they do not pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. It's always great to hear from you. And to our friends listening, I hope you shared your answers with the people next to you. Today is Earth Day, also known as Mother Earth Day, a very special day celebrated around the world to remind us to care for our planet and protect the environment. It is a time to think about how our actions affect the earth and how we can make better choices to keep it clean, healthy, and safe for everyone. Taking care of our planet is important because the earth gives us everything we need: clean air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, and the land to live on. If we don't protect it, pollution, waste, and damage to nature can affect people, animals, and plants. A healthy earth means a healthy future for all of us. There are many small things children can do every day to help the earth. Simple actions like throwing litter in the bin, recycling, picking up trash, using less plastic, and taking care of plants can make a big difference. Even turning off taps properly and not wasting food are ways of showing respect for the environment. Saving water and electricity is also very important. You can turn off the tap while brushing your teeth, take shorter showers, switch off lights when you're not in a room, and unplug devices when they're not in use. These small habits help conserve resources and reduce pollution. You can also encourage your friends and family to care for the environment by setting a good example. When others see you making responsible choices, they're more likely to do the same. You can remind them to recycle, keep the environment clean, and save water and electricity. Working together makes a big impact. Mother Earth Day reminds us that we all have a role to play in protecting our planet. Even the smallest actions, when done by many people, they can lead to a big positive change. By caring for the earth today, we're helping to create a cleaner, greener, and brighter future for generations to come. That's it for today, friends. See you next time.
If you miss any of our programs, you can catch up anytime on the SABC Plus app or on the SABC Plus website, www.sabcplus.com. Brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
SAFM.
Your weekends now have a rhythm on SAFM. Start your mornings with music of Africa, 3 to 6 a.m. with Sheila Ndikumana. Followed by Bongi Zwane on The Weekend View, 6 to 9, Saturday and Sunday. Then ease into your day with The Alternative Breakfast, 7 to 10 with Khomotso Matunyane and Ndumiso Ngobo. From 10 to 1, it's Seasons with KG Mwekezi. And your afternoon soundtrack comes alive with Ernest Pillay on the soundtrack of your life, 1 to 4 p.m. Drive into the evening with the classical fix, 4 to 7 with Dino Maduramutu. Saturday nights, it's Spotlight with Zai Khan, 7 to 9. And on Sunday, stay informed with the Santon Times Hour, 7 to 8. Then revisit the best moments on SAFM Rewind, 8 to 9. Followed by drama and documentary series, 9 to 10. And we round off the weekend in style with the Vinyl Corner with Kitty Petla.
SAFM music, crafted to make you feel real good. Handpicked just for your pleasure. classics sounding so good. Only on SAFM.
Listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
If you're watching us streaming, you just saw my tech producer and I playing Who's Switching on the Mic. Anyway, I confuse them sometimes. I keep them on their toes. Switch on the mic from my end, which is not the normal practice. We are having a conversation now looking at GRIT, which is the Gender Rights in Tech app. It's proudly made an SA application, this one. We're going to be in conversation with Leonora Tima, who is the GRIT founder and managing director. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and with South Africa obviously having high instances of sexual assault, there's been a need for innovative ways to protect ourselves and those that we love, but also to deal with the aftermath should one find themselves having been a victim or a survivor of sexual assault. So we'll find out how technology plugs into this greater social problem. How are you doing this afternoon, Leonora?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm doing great, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the time. We appreciate it. I mean, tell us a bit more about GRIT, the idea behind the Gender Rights in Tech application.
Yes, so we have been running since early 2021, and the app came out of a situation in my children's father's family where one of the young people in the family was a victim of gender-based violence, and she unfortunately was murdered. And in navigating that journey after that, I saw very clearly how hard it is to navigate a lot of the structures around the justice system and access to it and reporting. And so that's where the concept of the app was born out of. And then from there, we went into communities and spoke to a lot of people around how they were using their technology, why, if they were reporting, if not why, what would reporting via cell phone look like, and then from that we created the first version of the technology.
What becomes the role of tech innovation when it comes to matters of GBV, femicide, and how people are able to access resource?
Yeah, so I think, tech, for me, I see it as a perfect intervention in the anti-gender-based violence space, just because of the dynamics still around gender-based violence with, shaming and perceptions and patriarchal structures and systemic issues. It provides a platform where people can still access support and help. Sometimes, from the safety of wherever is a safe space for them, but also oftentimes people will come through the tech wanting anonymous support, and the technology does provide that for them. So they don't have to sit with the same issues of reshaming or victim re-traumatization and all of these things that we very often unfortunately see within the formal structures.
When it comes to the app GRIT, can you give us an understanding as to how it actually works?
Yes, of course. So what it is when you open up, you'll see in the middle there's a big panic button which says help. And if you are to click on that, it is a free and data-free service, and it will then count down from 10, just in case you activate it by mistake, just because, it also has a drop to activate function. So then you have time to turn it off. And then it links you with a call center who will then call you back. If you are, for example, if you can't hear, there's also possibility for them to indicate that within your settings, and then they'll actually reach out to you via WhatsApp. And then they'll see what your situation is. If you cannot answer the phone, they'll automatically dispatch services to your geolocation. And it also live and audio streams for the first 20 seconds with the premise of using cell phone data to increase possibility of prosecution. And then there's a vault within the app where you can upload anything related to a situation you're in. Maybe you're not ready to open a case, but you have screenshots or voice notes or videos. You can upload all of those. You can store any documents in case maybe you think you're in a domestic violence situation that you might want to leave quite quickly and you want to make sure you have all your documents saved. Or you can link it to an actual case that you're looking for support on and then reach out to us on our WhatsApp line, and then that data is also available there. And then we also have a support services map that you can go in and see what supports are available in your area. Or you can chat to our AI chatbot, Druzy, who is trained on like local context, but also on services very broadly around gender-based violence, but also including sexual reproductive health, access to abortion, tech-facilitated gender-based violence. And you can just chat with her, and she's very friendly.
By way of forgotten victims, right? We see a lot of domestic violence cases in the most remote and rural parts of South Africa. How important is ensuring that a tech like this is easily accessible and penetrates those communities?
It's exceptionally important, and that's why we take our whole process is around co-creating technology. So we have spent a lot of time going into very rural, underserved communities and building out these tech with these communities and looking at what does accessibility look like. What language do people use? Because the justice system, the language it uses, is often so far removed from the actual language that people on the ground use. So how can our technology reflect that language? What actually makes the technology usable in those scenarios? We haven't yet been able to deploy using USSD, but that is something that we would like to do so that people don't only have access to smartphones to be able to use it. But we've also taken an approach where we will train up people within the community, where the idea of like a shared phone if somebody has an emergency, or in a library or a youth center, the tech is also there, so that it's not only relying on people having smartphones to be able to access this kind of technology.
And I think as we wind down in our last 2 minutes, the cost factor element, always something that should be discussed with tech innovations such as this. Does it come zero rated or perhaps low cost data usage?
So at the moment we reverse bill on the data, so it's completely free and you don't have to have data. We are working with the Department of Innovation to look at it being zero rated, but at the moment there isn't a policy in place yet for applications of zero rating. So that's what we're hoping over the next year or so.
Wonderful stuff. Well, an incredible innovation here, and obviously plugging into a greater social problem. Unfortunately, our time has fast run out, Leonora, because I would have actually loved to throw a hint down your way around a young inventor, Buhlale Mpahlela, who has also invented a safety device that acts as an ordinary earring that captures image and sound and reports back to the sort of necessary safety and security arms. And I think it would be so great for innovators such as yourselves to lock each other into rooms with shared experience and see how you can maximize on both your technologies for the intended purpose. That was Leonora Tima, who is the GRIT founder and managing director. It's gone 10 to 3 o'clock. A quick pause and then we'll come back on the other side.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Based upon what we know, for example, different political parties expressing themselves in their own, there's grounds now for an impeachment. Do you think that is pushing the boundaries too far?
Well, it seems like, having regard to the fact that Parliament itself commissioned a commission to investigate that, and they took a decision not to proceed with that type of approach. What we should not lose focus on is that there must be some requirements met for people to persuade us that there's wrongdoing. I don't think the public will protect anybody if there's wrongdoing.
Modidima Mania, the advocate and legal analyst.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You are listening to The Full Circle.
Well, maybe we should make this public call, right? If Leonora also says that she's been trying to get in contact with Ubuhlale Mpahlela, who is a 16-year-old from South Africa, and she's designed an earring, a literal earring, that can photograph a criminal and alert police to a criminal situation that is happening at that time. If you know her, if you know her family, if you know of her, we've been trying to get in contact with her on social media. We would love to have the connections. So if you do know somebody who knows her, the young innovator, because we'd love to platform her on the show and get an idea of her story and how this innovation came to be. Imagine wearing an earring that, however it works, and then it's able to capture the image, capture the sound, capture the incident, and still dial 10-111 on your behalf and whatever other services that you need. Right, let's wrap up the show now. Day 95 at the Madlanga Commission, and today's witness has been on the stand since the better part of the morning, and it's the suspended Sidibeng District Commissioner Brigadier Mgwashu, who from previous testimony is alleged to have instructed the investigating officers in the Adman Swart murder case to hand over all related dockets to him. Now, he claims he was instructed to obtain the dockets and to hand them over to Gauteng Provincial Commissioner Tommy Mtombeni or face the possibility of disciplinary action. There's a bit of a he said, she said in as far as this claim is concerned, but this is why we have the Madlanga Commission to find out exactly where in there, between what you say and I say, where the truth lays, because it emerged that Ntombeni's office never formally communicated this instruction to the investigating officer. Let's get some highlights from today's interactions.
Between Katiso and myself, we met at a restaurant also in Alberton.
Brigadier, just to clarify, so you hadn't met him at all between 2021 and 2024?
I've never met him before.
Thank you.
Thanks. Indeed, a meeting was arranged between Katiso and myself. We met at a restaurant also in Alberton. When I met Katiso...
When was this?
That was end of June 2024.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. When I met Katiso, we conversed generally about our respective personal circumstances after he was introduced to me by my sister-in-law, who was still in the company of the 17-year-old nephew of mine. He mentioned that he was involved in various business interests, including the security sector. As part of a general discussion about future plans, I indicated that I was approaching retirement from the subs. The discussion remained informal and exploratory in nature, to an extent that he told me that he's got this big tender in Machabeng, and he will want security forces to come and work there. So should I be interested when I retire, I can just go into work with him and in that space with my experience as a police officer. Then I accepted, and then I said, no, I will be interested, but we will talk because there are processes to undergo. Then that was it with regard to our conversations, and amongst others. I'm just specifically talking to this because I know that later we will come to dwell into it. But we spoke at length and amongst many things, just catching up to know him.
And Brigadier, just for clarity, you say that both your nephew and sister were there. Was that there was just the four of you? Or were there other people at the meeting?
Thank you, Advocate. In that meeting, it was the only four of us. And Fundisa came with my nephew, and then she introduced us. And then after introducing us, she left us. She left the two of us to talk man to man.
You know, after the Madlanga Commission, that line of questioning at organizations that often speaks to, do you have relatives or friends that are within the organization or that do work that pertains to the services that we render, etc., 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 I think will start being scrutinized so much more, so much more. But that is where we leave it today from our end. Ashraf picks up the conversation on the National Pulse, and we'll have your next Madlanga update at about 5:45 p.m. from our side. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again tomorrow.
For 90 years, one voice has informed, challenged, and connected a nation. SAFM, South Africa's national English public radio station. Established in 1936 as the SABC's very first service, the A program evolving through the English service, Radio South Africa to SAFM in 1995, shaping thought and strengthening democracy. From a full-spectrum station to a trusted home of news and talk, SAFM continues to lead the conversations 90 years strong. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
On the top stories, SAHRC raises concern over possible delays in victims' cases and calls grow for Masemula's suspension. For SAFM News, I'm Ondilambana, and a very good afternoon. The SAHRC has raised concerns of possible delays in handling victims' cases as the Constitutional Court ruled that they have no legal powers to enforce their own directives. In its judgment, the Apex Court reaffirmed that the SAHRC must approach the courts to give legal effect to its findings, underscoring the limits of Chapter 9 institutions and preserving the judiciary's role in enforcement. SAHRC Commissioner Tsepo Madlingozi has cautioned that victims whose cases are handled by the Commission may now face delays, citing ongoing resources constraints that affect its ability to litigate effectively.
It's going to be a challenge because the Commission receives about 10,000 complaints a year. We finalize about 6,000 to 8,000 complaints. Now, what this judgment means is that in cases where the respondent refuses to comply with our recommendation, we will have to go to court to enforce our decisions. Now, that is not financially viable. The Commission does not have enough litigation budget to do so. That's number one. But most importantly,
the National Prosecuting Authority in Gauteng has hailed the Pretoria North Magistrates Court's decision to dismiss suspended police surgeon Fanny Ngosi's bail application. The matter has been postponed to May 21st. Ngosi was arrested following a raid at his Pretoria North home where dockets, explosives, ammunition and cash were found earlier this month. NPA spokesperson Lumka Mahanjana.
We welcome the decision by the court to deny Sergeant Nkosi bail. This is the right step towards the direction of criminal justice system. It proves our case, hence we opposed his bail application. The court also found that he failed to discharge to the court to convince the court that it was in the interest of justice that he be denied bail. We opposed his bail application and told the court that Nkosi cannot be released on bail because he poses a danger to society. He is a flight risk. The matter was postponed to the 21st of May for further investigations.
The ANC in Parliament has added its voice to those calling on President Cyril Ramaphosa to restore the dignity of the office of the National Police Commissioner. This as Masamula was in the dock in the Pretoria Magistrates Court yesterday. He has been charged with contravening the Public Finance Management Act for the 360 million rand SAPS Health Services tender awarded to alleged criminal cartel member Vusimuzi Cat Matlala's company. The chairperson of Parliament's Police Committee, Ian Cameron, was the first to call on Ramaphosa to immediately suspend Masamula. ANC MP Dikeledi Dereko says the party is noting the latest developments with concern.
Given that the National Commissioner has now formally been charged, it is therefore the responsibility of the President to restore the integrity of that office, given the fact that the President bears both constitutional and executive responsibility with matters relating to the National Commissioner.
The Gauteng Office of Consumer Affairs has welcomed amendments to the Consumer Protection Act, which places the onus on businesses instead of consumers to prevent unwanted direct marketing. The new regulations were gazetted on the 15th of this month. Consumers can now register on the opt-out registry to stop unsolicited telemarketing calls and SMSs. The amendments will be effective from July this year. Millie Feljun from Gauteng Office of Consumer Affairs says non-compliant businesses will be liable for a 1 million rand fine or 10% of a company's annual turnover.
The Gauteng Office of Consumer Affairs encourages consumers to register on the now newly created opt-out registry to stop unsolicited telemarketing calls, SMSs, and emails from businesses. This follows the amendment to the regulations of the Consumer Protection Act by the National Consumer Commission to protect consumers from spam calls.
An investigation in South Korea has found that two fighter jets collided in mid-air because the pilots were taking pictures and videos with their mobile phones. The pilots survived with no injuries, but the collision damaged the planes. The BBC's Thomas Becker has more details.
The incident took place 5 years ago while the jets were on a mission over the city of Daegu. The investigators found that one of the pilots wanted to take photos of his last flight with the unit. The pilot of another jet filmed a video. Eventually, the two F-15Ks collided, although they remained airborne and later landed safely. The repairs cost more than